Welcome back to Winning Isn't Easy. Are you ready to go? Great. Now, what I'm going to talk about next is what the disability carrier does with that work history form. In the last segment, I talked about what that work history form asks in terms of questions. But one of the things you need to understand from the very beginning is that when you purchased your disability insurance policy, you did not insure your job. What do you say? What you really insured was your occupation. So the disability carrier's vocational evaluator is going to translate that job information on your form to determine what your occupation was. And then the carrier is going to determine whether you can do that occupation or in the occupation stage of a case, what other occupations you hypothetically, mythically really can't do, but could be the basis of a denial. You can see that this is an area that the disability carrier can screw up, and they do it all the time because the devil is in the details. Unfortunately, you don't understand what the devil does with those details. Let's start out first with what the term regular occupation means. So as I said, the policy doesn't insure a job, it insures your occupation. So let's get out your disability policy. There is no uniform disability policy, much less a uniform definition of occupation. But generally speaking, the operative considerations in determining what your occupation is number one, what was your occupation that you were routinely performing when your disability began? And what are the material and substantial duties required of your occupation? Now, remember, there's a big difference between what you do for a job and what your occupation is. Group disability policies insure you to the extent that you're unable to perform your own occupation, as generally it's normally performed by people who do the same occupation in the United States, instead of how the task was performed for a specific employer or a specific location. That standard is important. That's why we want to get out that disability insurance policy and see what is the definition of your occupation, because that's the starting point when we're applying for disability benefits. Why is that important? Well, the insurance company will usually use something called the Dictionary of Occupational Titles to take all those job duties and filter them into an occupation. Now, if your employer requires job duties that are not required of other employers in the local economy or the national economy, your occupation just may end up being different under the Dictionary of Occupational Titles. That can make or break your claim. Now, the definition of regular occupation is different in an individual disability policy, and hopefully you've got a specialty or subspecialty policy. So you might be insured as an interventional cardiologist, and if you become disabled from performing the duties of an interventional cardiologist, you'll be paid benefits even though you could perform the duties of a cardiologist. You can see the definition of disability, own occupation, is different in an individual disability policy than it is in an ERISA disability policy. But regardless of what policy you have, you need to get out the policy and read that definition. Let's take apart the own occupation policy language. There are some operative terms: limited, material and substantial duties, and regular occupation. Now, your policy may actually identify these terms. There's a definition section, so go to the definition section and then reread your policy definition of disability, because you've got to figure out what's my occupation and what's the standard of disability. So if you just blow through that form, you're not going to understand what it is you need to prove. So what does the term limited mean? It means you can't do all the important tasks that are normally identified with your occupation. Now, the carrier is going to request from your employer a job description. And as part of your claim, if I'm representing you, I want you to get a copy of your employer's description, because more often than not, I'm going to ask you to compare your employer's description of your occupation with what it is you actually do. And I want my clients to write out their version of their job description. So why? Because, as I said, the disability insurance carrier is going to have their in-house vocational evaluator translate that job description into an occupation using this book called the Dictionary of Occupational Titles. And it's not unusual for the VE to make a mistake about your occupation. I want to use these documents, the employer's job description and your description, to address any mislabeling or misclassification of your occupation. The next two important terms are material and substantial duties. Now, material and substantial duties are generally those duties that are required for the performance of your regular occupation, and they can't be reasonably omitted or modified. So let's think about an example. You might be eligible for benefits if you're a dentist and you have carpal tunnel syndrome, because that prohibits you from holding your instruments and doing dental procedures. Material duties are those specific job-related tasks that are characteristic of the occupation, and they're qualitative in nature. So if those duties were eliminated, then your occupation as defined would not exist. Material duties really relate to specific job-related tasks, and as I said, they're qualitative. So in performing dental procedures like filling teeth, one would consider that to be a material duty of a dentist. It's qualitative. Now, substantial duties are tasks that represent the largest portion of the total task done in an 8-hour day. And these are quantitative, and they refer to the time spent doing duties. Now, in general, duties requiring more than 20% of your workday are both considered material and substantial in nature. Now, what I like my clients to do is to basically write down the material and substantial duties of their occupation, particularly if I'm representing a professional. If you're a dentist, I want you to write down what it is you do, the fillings, the crowns, the root canal, whatever it is you do, I want you to write that down. And I want you to write down across the top of the paper and make some columns, put physical, cognitive, and behavioral. And I want you to say, okay, material duties, I'm going to do a filling. The physical requirements are that I use X number of instruments and my hand is in certain positions. And I am bent over or I am using my neck in a different position. Cognitively, I need to be able to understand and look at the x-rays and figure out what needs to be done. And I've got to interact with the patient. Now, remember, we talked about substantial duties. We also want to understand how frequently you do these procedures. And I assure you, if you're a professional, the carrier is going to ask for your billing records because they want to see, and they'll analyze this, what percentage of your practice is doing what different types of procedures. They're not necessarily interested in the income. They want to know the number of procedures because we need to show that you can't do the material duties and the substantial duties. Now, how about those limitations? Once we've created this form that's got material and substantial duties, we've got physical, cognitive, and behavioral in columns. There's another column I want to add to this spreadsheet, and that's limited. How are your particular medical problems limiting you in doing the material duties by procedure? Now, you may need to do that based on the multiple medical conditions you have. But let's say you've just got carpal tunnel or you have a problem with your neck. We're going to say, carpal tunnel, right hand, left hand. I can't do this particular activity when I am doing a filling. I have difficulty using the drill to drill out the filling, or I have difficulty tamping down, or the things that you do in the course of a filling, because this is going to be a roadmap for us looking at your medical records to see whether or not you are having problems that are documented in your medical records. We're going to use this document with your doctor so that they understand what it is the material and substantial duties are. So when they fill out that blasted attending physician form, they know what you do and what you're having trouble with. And of course, we want to make sure that that's reflected in all the other application forms that you're completing. You can see this is just not filling out a work history form. This involves strategy, tactics, and thinking about how we're going to make sure that your records and financial documents support this claim. Now, I mentioned a book called The Dictionary of Occupational Titles, and we start out this discussion with the definition of disability and the definition of own occupation. Is the definition of disability inability to perform your own occupation as it's performed for your employer in the local economy or the national economy or according to the Dictionary of Occupational Titles? So you can pause this for a second and type in the word Dictionary of Occupational Titles and type in what it is you think your occupation is. Wow. When you look at the results, you're going to be stunned because it probably doesn't look like or sound like what it is you do. And if you can't find an accurate description based on what you've typed in, you might have to do a little searching, because that's what the vocational evaluator is going to do. They're going to try to take these tasks and plug you into an occupation that might not be your own occupation. And that can lead to a claim denial. So I know that far too many applicants, including doctors and lawyers, just don't take this work history form or occupational analysis form seriously, because they think everybody knows what I do, but not my clients. We go the extra mile, and under my direction, we're preparing this customized work history and an occupational analysis as part of our shock and awe application that we submit in a package on behalf of our client. Now, we, as I said, want to make sure that your doctor understands what it is you're doing, that when they fill out the attending physician statement form, they've got an accurate description of your occupational duties and can clearly explain in your medical records and on these forms why you can't do the material and substantial duties of your own occupation. Now, that's a heck of a lot of work, but I think that work is necessary to get the disability benefits you deserve. And knock on wood, I've never had an initial application that I've submitted in my shock and awe package denied. Now, I'm going to give you a real life example of how a disability carrier screws up this analysis of what own occupation is and how courts will look at this issue. So let's take a quick break, and when we return, we're going to finish up. Stay tuned.
Are you a professional with questions about your individual disability policy? You need the Disability Insurance Claim Survival Guide for Professionals. This book gives you a comprehensive understanding of your disability policy with tips and to-dos regarding your disability application that will assist you in submitting a winning disability application. This is one you won't want to miss. For the next 24 hours, we are giving away free copies of the Disability Insurance Claim Survival Guide for Professionals. Order yours today at disabilityclaimsforprofessionals.com.